Part 1 begins quietly, almost like any normal day in the universe. Far from Earth, on a peaceful research station built on a small colony world, a group of scientists and students from different planets worked together. They were not soldiers or fighters. They were learners, observers, and dreamers. Among them was a young human girl who had been chosen for the exchange program because of her curiosity and kindness. She had always wanted to see what life looked like beyond Earth, and this chance felt like a doorway to something big and exciting. To her family back home, she was still just a kid with a bright future. Someone who laughed easily and believed the world was full of good people. She spent her days recording notes, studying new plants, and learning how different species communicated. The colony itself was calm, with wide open fields, soft winds, and quiet nights. Everyone believed this mission was safe. Earth had signed peaceful agreements with many civilizations, and this world was supposed to be neutral, a place for science, not conflict. She felt safe there, far from crowds and noise. She often sent cheerful messages back home, telling her family how beautiful the skies looked and how differently the stars shined in this part of space. But while everyone trusted the calm, something darker was watching from the shadows. A hostile alien faction had been growing restless nearby. They did not believe in alliances or peace. To them, humans were strangers who did not belong outside their home planet. They watched the research colony with suspicion, and over time, their resentment began to harden into something dangerous. No one on the colony knew they were being watched. There were no alarms, no warnings, and no reason to think danger was close. One evening, the girl walked outside the research station to collect readings from a scanner placed near a rocky hill. It was something she had done many times before. The air was quiet, and the sky glowed with a soft purple tint. She liked moments like this, simple and calm. But this time, she didn't return. Minutes passed, then an hour, and the team began to worry. They tried calling her communicator, but there was no answer. At first, they thought maybe the device had malfunctioned. Maybe she had wandered too far and lost signal. They kept reassuring themselves that everything was fine. After all, nothing bad had ever happened here before. But soon, denial turned into fear. A search party was formed. Flashlights swept across fields and rocks. Her name was called again and again into the dark. When she still didn't respond, panic spread through the small team. They reported the incident through secure channels, asking for help and instructions. No one wanted to believe that she might be in danger, but every passing minute felt heavier. Hours later, she was found near the edge of a canyon, weak and shaken. She could barely speak. Her clothing was damaged, her hands trembled, and her eyes showed a kind of fear that no one on the colony had ever seen before. There were signs she had been captured and mistreated by an unknown group. The researchers rushed her back to the base, calling for medical assistance and emergency transport. She didn't scream or cry. She was too exhausted. She just stared ahead, as if her mind was still trapped in whatever had happened to her. Doctors examined her carefully. They didn't see deep physical wounds, but they could tell she had been frightened, restrained, and pushed beyond her limits. Her voice shook when she tried to explain. She said there were creatures, angry voices, and cold rooms. She remembered being questioned, handled roughly, and treated like she wasn't even a person. Her words broke the hearts of the people listening. She was just a young student, someone who had come here to learn. She had harmed no one. She had no weapon, no power, no threat. And yet, she had been targeted. The research team immediately sent a classified report to Earth. The message traveled through secure lines, hidden from public channels. The leaders who received it were stunned. This was not a simple accident. This was a deliberate act against a human citizen. And because the girl was part of an official exchange program, It was also an act against Earth itself. The report included her emotional state, the signs of intimidation, and the evidence that she had been forcibly taken. Even though she survived, the trauma she carried was undeniable. Earth's leadership gathered in a closed meeting. High-ranking officials, security experts, and advisors sat around a long table, listening to the details. The room stayed silent for a long time. For years, Earth had worked hard to maintain peaceful relationships across space. The goal was cooperation, not conflict. But this attack was different. It wasn't a misunderstanding or an accident. It was a message, one that suggested an enemy was willing to harm the innocent. Some officials argued that they should approach the situation with calm diplomacy. Others believed that ignoring it would show weakness. There were disagreements, raised voices, and heavy tension. But one thing was certain. The girl's suffering had crossed a line. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't part of any military action. She was simply a youth who wanted to learn. The idea that someone would mistreat someone so defenseless shook everyone deeply. It wasn't just about strategy. It was about humanity. Behind the calm public image, Earth had always known that the universe carried risks. That was why certain programs existed in secret projects designed only for emergencies. Programs that the public didn't know about. Among them was a classified initiative that had been hidden for decades. It was whispered about only in the highest levels of command. Most believed it would never be used. It was created as a last resort in case humanity ever faced a threat that required swift and silent action. Now, for the first time, leaders considered activating it. But before making that decision, they needed to fully understand what had happened. They sent investigators to the colony, instructed to gather evidence discreetly. The girl was questioned gently, with care and patience. She struggled to talk at times. Her voice would shake, her breath would catch, and sometimes tears would fill her eyes before she could speak another word. But she tried. She wanted people to know that what happened wasn't an accident. She remembered being surrounded, pulled away, and overwhelmed. She remembered faces filled with anger, as if her existence alone was offensive. Her statements were recorded and stored in a secure database. The medical team noted signs of stress and trauma. Specialists confirmed she had been treated harshly and held against her will. Even though she was physically stable, her emotional wounds were deep. When Earth's leaders saw the reports, something shifted. This wasn't just a case of mistreatment. It was a warning. A line had been crossed, and if Earth did nothing, more innocent people could suffer. Still, no public announcement was made. The news was kept hidden from ordinary citizens to prevent panic and prevent rumors from spreading. The girl was transported safely back to Earth, where she was reunited with her family. The moment she saw them, she broke down, clinging to them as if terrified they might disappear. Her family held her close, promising she was safe now. But even in their arms, she felt small and fragile, unsure if the universe could ever feel safe again. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Earth's top officials reviewed the classified programs one by one. They studied old files, scanned security plans, and revisited projects that had been buried for years. Among those files was the blueprint for a secret unit highly trained operatives prepared for missions that required precision, intelligence, and controlled strength. They were not meant to start wars. They were meant to stop danger before it grew. For decades, they had never been used, waiting quietly in the background like a silent shield. Now, as leaders stared at the evidence of what had been done to the girl, they realized this shield might finally be needed. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and not always kind. And while Earth believed in peace, it also believed in protecting its people, especially the innocent. Part 1 ends not with action, but with a heavy decision hanging in the air. Humanity had been harmed. A young girl had returned home changed forever. And somewhere out there, an enemy believed they could break humans without consequences. Earth knew they could not allow that belief to grow. Quietly, secretly, a door was beginning to open. A program long kept in the shadows was being considered. And though no one spoke it out loud yet, the feeling was unmistakable. Something was coming, and it wouldn't be ordinary. Part 2 begins in the quiet, highly secured halls of Earth's most secret government facilities. After the incident with the young girl, the leaders knew they had to act, but carefully. They couldn't risk panic on Earth, and they couldn't risk alerting hostile forces that they were preparing a response. The situation was delicate. Yet, every passing day reminded them that waiting could be dangerous. The girl's suffering had proven that some beings in the galaxy did not respect innocence. In a hidden chamber, deep under the surface of a remote location on Earth, a group of officials gathered. They spoke in hushed voices, their faces tense. On a table in the middle of the room lay folders, blueprints, and digital tablets filled with information that had never seen the light of day. One folder was marked with a symbol that almost no one recognized anymore, a symbol representing a program that had been created decades ago in complete secrecy. Its purpose was clear: to protect humanity when no ordinary army could respond in time, to act where diplomacy and standard forces could not reach, and to stop threats quietly before they escalated. This program was known only as the Vanguard Initiative. It had been built in stages, layer by layer, by scientists, trainers, and military strategists who believed that one day humanity might face threats too dangerous to be handled openly. Its members were trained from childhood or recruited carefully for their intelligence, courage, and adaptability. They were enhanced through advanced technology, physical conditioning, and mental training. Every move, every thought, every reaction was honed to perfection. Yet they were not superheroes. They were human, and their strength came from discipline, skill, and teamwork. The officials opened the dossier and began reviewing profiles of potential operatives. Each person listed had undergone extreme training. Some had survived impossible survival missions, navigating hostile terrain without leaving a trace. Others had completed simulations that tested their limits to see if they could resist fear, anger, or panic in situations where life or death hung in the balance. Some had exceptional medical knowledge. Others were experts in engineering, stealth, or tactical strategy. Every one of them had proven that when danger came, they would not fail. It was decided that this program, which had remained dormant for so long, would now be activated. The attack on the young girl was unacceptable. It had crossed a line that Earth could not ignore. But the activation of the program was not a public announcement. No one outside this chamber would know. The world had to remain calm, unaware of the forces moving in secret to defend them. A team was assembled. They were contacted individually, summoned to a secure location under strict confidentiality. Some were currently serving in covert operations, blending into civilian life. Others had been in training for years without knowing when they might be called. When each member arrived, they were briefed carefully. The mission was simple in description, but complex in execution. Travel to the location where the girl had been taken. Gather evidence of the hostile faction's actions. Rescue any captives, and ensure that such threats would not happen again. As the team reviewed the data, it became clear that this mission would require more than just courage. They would need precision, planning, and absolute focus. The enemy was unfamiliar, unpredictable, and willing to harm the innocent. The team spent hours studying maps, analyzing surveillance data, and learning the alien faction's patterns. Every detail mattered: the placement of sensors, the likely patrol routes, the terrain, the timing of shifts. They ran simulations repeatedly, refining their approach, preparing for every possible outcome. One member spoke quietly, almost to himself. "We are not just soldiers. We are the shield for those who cannot protect themselves." Another nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. They weren't here to fight for glory or recognition. They were here to ensure that no one else would face what the young girl had endured. The team also spent time understanding the human aspect of the mission. They learned about the girl, her personality, her bravery, and her kindness. This was more than a tactical operation. It was personal in a way. They were not only rescuing captives, they were saving lives, protecting innocence, and defending the idea that humanity could not be broken by cruelty. After days of preparation, the team was ready. They boarded a stealth transport ship, one designed to travel undetected through space. Its hull could evade radar, its engines whispered silently, and its systems were optimized for precision. On board, the team checked their equipment, reviewed mission details, and mentally prepared themselves for the challenge ahead. There was tension in the air, but also a quiet determination. They all knew the stakes. Failure was not an option. As the ship left Earth's atmosphere, the team looked out at the stars. From that view, the universe seemed calm, almost peaceful. But they all knew that somewhere out there, danger waited. Somewhere beyond the visible stars, the hostile faction continued their work, unaware that Earth had sent its most skilled operatives to intervene. The contrast was striking. Peaceful lights in the distance shadowed threats closer than anyone might imagine. Inside the ship, the team continued reviewing plans. They discussed approaches, contingencies, and signals. Every member had a specific role. One was the navigator, calculating the fastest and safest route through unknown space. Another specialized in extraction, planning how to bring the captives out safely without alerting the enemy. Others focused on communications, making sure that Earth could receive updates in real time without revealing the mission to anyone else. Despite all the planning, there was still an air of uncertainty. The alien faction's behavior was unpredictable, and this mission had never been attempted before. But the team relied on their training. They had prepared for the unknown. They had learned to adapt quickly, to stay calm under pressure, and to trust each other completely. That trust was their greatest weapon. Finally, the ship approached the target system. It was a barren world, rocky and cold, with little atmosphere to support life outside the controlled habitats built by the hostile faction. The team donned their suits, checked their gear, and ran through final protocols. They moved silently, with precision. The ship landed in a concealed location, hidden behind jagged cliffs and shadows. The team disembarked, stepping into unfamiliar territory. Every sound felt louder in the cold, thin air. Every shadow could hide danger. Yet the team remained focused. They moved with purpose, scanning the environment and keeping communication quiet and precise. Their mission was not just about speed, it was about safety, for both the team and any potential captives. As they advanced toward the enemy facility, evidence of previous human presence became visible. Signs of struggle, broken tools, and makeshift barriers indicated that the faction had been experimenting or holding individuals against their will. The team documented everything silently, ensuring that nothing was missed. This evidence would be critical, not only for the rescue, but for proving to the galaxy that Earth acted responsibly and ethically. Night fell over the rocky terrain. The team paused briefly, taking cover and observing the alien structure from a distance. It was heavily guarded, with sensors, watchtowers, and automated defenses. But the operatives had been trained for such challenges. They studied patrol patterns, calculating the optimal time to move forward. The operation required stealth, intelligence, and patience. Rushing could jeopardize the mission and endanger lives. For hours, the team watched, waiting for the right moment. Finally, the opportunity came. A change in the patrol rotation created a window of relative safety. They advanced, moving quietly, each step deliberate and controlled. Their goal was clear: reach the captives, ensure their safety, and gather proof of wrongdoing. There was no room for error. Every action, every decision, could mean the difference between life and death. Even as tension built, the team remained calm. They communicated in subtle gestures, silent signals, and whispers only they could understand. Their training had prepared them for this moment. They had faced impossible scenarios in simulations, and now reality was testing them. But the thought of the young girl, the human who had been harmed so senselessly, kept them focused. They weren't fighting for themselves. They were fighting for humanity, for innocence, and for the principle that cruelty could not go unchallenged. By the end of this part, the team had reached the outer perimeter of the facility. They paused again, checking all systems, ensuring that everyone was ready. Ahead of them lay the unknown, the alien faction, the captives, and the challenges that awaited inside. But for the first time in many days, a sense of purpose filled the team. They were ready to act, ready to face danger, and ready to protect those who could not protect themselves. Part 2 ends with the team on the edge of action. They are in place, their plan prepared, and their minds focused. The shadows of the enemy surround them, but so does determination. Earth has sent its elite operatives, and nothing, no obstacle, no danger will prevent them from fulfilling their mission. Something important is about to happen. The story of courage, skill, and human resilience is about to unfold. Part 3 begins with the team standing just outside the alien facility, hidden behind jagged rocks and uneven terrain. The air was thin and cold, and every sound seemed sharper than usual. Even the soft hum of their equipment felt loud in the silence. They were close now, closer than they had ever been, and every member of the team knew that the next few hours could change everything. They had trained for this moment countless times, running through simulations, reviewing tactical plans, and imagining what they might face. But now, reality was waiting, and it was unpredictable. The facility ahead was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was massive, built into the rocky cliffs with walls of dark metal that absorbed the weak light of the twin moons. Strange structures jutted out, antennas and towers scanning the area, sending signals back to the alien faction's central command. Automated sensors lined the perimeter, and distant patrols moved methodically like living shadows. Every step they took had to be deliberate, every movement quiet, or their presence would be detected. The team paused to observe. They knew the importance of patience. One wrong move could not only jeopardize their mission, but also put the captives' lives at risk. They split into small groups, each member assigned a specific task. One group would monitor the patrols and sensors, another would focus on entry points, and a third would prepare for extraction once the captives were found. Every role was crucial. Every person's actions could determine success or failure. As they crept forward, they noticed signs of previous human presence. Pieces of torn clothing, makeshift tools, and small personal items suggested that humans had been brought here before, and some might still be inside. The thought made the team's resolve stronger. This was not just a mission about strategy or intelligence. It was about saving lives. They had to move carefully, but they could not hesitate. Inside the facility, the alien faction worked quietly but efficiently. They did not expect visitors, not at least from a group like this. Their attention was on experiments and routines, which made the team's careful approach effective. Using shadows and terrain for cover, the operatives moved closer. Every step was calculated, every sound minimized. They used hand signals and subtle gestures to communicate, knowing that even a whisper could give away their location. The first challenge came sooner than expected. One patrol turned a corner unexpectedly, scanning the area near the team's path. For a tense moment, the operatives froze, blending into the rocky landscape. Their hearts raced, but they remained calm. One member used a small device to temporarily disrupt the patrol's sensors, allowing them to pass without raising an alarm. It was a quiet success, but the tension remained. They knew that each success now had to be replicated many times over to reach the captives safely. As they advanced, they found evidence of the faction's cruelty. Small chambers with signs of confinement, damaged equipment that looked like it had been used to restrain or manipulate, and faint markings on walls that hinted at psychological experiments. The operatives felt a deep sense of urgency. This wasn't just about strategy. It was about human dignity and the responsibility to act when others could not defend themselves. They documented everything carefully, photographing, scanning, and recording evidence without making a sound. Hours passed as the team navigated through the facility. The terrain was complex, filled with narrow corridors, metallic staircases, and hidden rooms. They had to move slowly, always alert for movement, sounds, or changes in lighting. The alien faction's technology was unfamiliar, requiring constant analysis to avoid traps or alarms. The operatives relied on their training, each member observing patterns, calculating risks, and predicting the faction's responses. Finally, they reached a secure area that appeared to be holding captives. From a distance, they could see faint movement inside. The captives were weak, some crouched in corners, others sitting with their heads down. The team quickly confirmed that they were still alive. Relief mixed with determination. They had come for this moment, and they could not fail. The extraction plan was executed with precision. The operatives moved quietly into position, using specialized tools to disable locks and barriers. They worked in pairs, covering each other and the captives. The team maintained constant communication, signaling every step. Even the smallest mistake could alert the faction, so every movement was deliberate. As they opened the containment area, the captives looked up, their faces filled with fear and confusion. The sight of the operatives, calm and determined, brought a flicker of hope. One of the team members spoke gently, assuring them that they were safe and that no harm would come to them. The captives hesitated at first, uncertain whether to trust strangers, but the operatives' actions spoke louder than words. They guided the captives carefully, keeping them low and out of sight. However, extraction was not without danger. Alarms had been triggered, not fully, but enough to alert the faction that something was amiss. Distant footsteps and mechanical sounds began to echo through the facility. The operatives moved faster, keeping calm under pressure. They adjusted their route, avoiding heavily patrolled areas, and led the captives through alternate corridors that had been identified during reconnaissance. The team's training proved invaluable. They used every skill at their disposal: stealth, observation, quick decision-making, and adaptability. When one route was blocked unexpectedly, they calculated a new path in seconds. When a patrol appeared unexpectedly, they found hiding spots or used temporary distractions to move past undetected. The tension was intense, but they remained focused on the goal. Failure was not an option. During the extraction, one of the operatives discovered a small chamber with documents and digital records. These appeared to contain the faction's plans and evidence of their treatment of humans. The operative quickly secured the data, ensuring it could be used later to hold the faction accountable. Every piece of information mattered. This mission was not just about saving lives, it was about justice, protection, and sending a clear message that cruelty could not go unpunished. As they moved toward the exit, the team noticed that some of the captives were too weak to walk quickly. They improvised, carrying some and supporting others, maintaining a careful balance between speed and safety. The operatives communicated silently, adjusting movements and watching for any sign of detection. The facility was large and complex, but their preparation and teamwork allowed them to navigate it efficiently. Finally, they reached an access point that led outside. The rocky terrain stretched before them, but it offered cover and a path back to the transport ship. The operatives moved with the captives, keeping low and moving quickly but cautiously. Behind them, the facility's alarms began to escalate. The alien faction had realized an intrusion, but the operatives were already several steps ahead. Their knowledge of the terrain, combined with careful planning, allowed them to avoid direct confrontation. Once outside, they paused briefly, ensuring everyone was accounted for and that no one had been left behind. The captives were frightened, exhausted, and relieved all at once. The operatives reassured them, guiding them toward the concealed ship that awaited them. The journey to the ship was tense, every shadow potentially hiding danger, but the team's calm determination carried them forward. Boarding the ship was the final step in the extraction. Once inside, the operatives secured the captives and confirmed that everyone was safe. Systems were checked, and the ship prepared for immediate departure. The alien faction might pursue, but the ship's stealth technology would keep them hidden during the escape. For the first time in many hours, the team allowed themselves a quiet moment of relief. They had reached the captives, rescued them, and secured evidence. Yet there was no celebration. They knew the mission was not over. The faction had been disrupted, but not destroyed. Their actions had sent a message, but the universe remained unpredictable. The operatives remained vigilant, ready for the next challenge. Their focus shifted from extraction to safe return, understanding that every life saved was also a responsibility carried forward. Part 3 ends with the operatives aboard their ship, moving away from the hostile world. The captives were alive, protected, and slowly beginning to recover from their ordeal. Evidence of the faction's actions was secured. The team's training, courage, and determination had ensured success. Yet the experience left a quiet mark on everyone. They had seen cruelty, fear, and desperation, but they had also witnessed hope, resilience, and the strength of human determination. As the stars stretched out before them, the operatives knew that this mission was only one of many that might be required to protect humanity. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and fear, and they had prevailed. Their journey continued, but the purpose remained clear: protect the innocent, uphold justice, and act when others could not. And somewhere deep inside each operative, there was the quiet understanding that what they had done mattered, not for recognition, not for fame, but because humanity deserved protection, and because even the smallest acts of courage could ripple across the universe in ways no one could predict. Part 4 begins as the team moves deeper into enemy territory. The rescued captives had been left behind in a temporary safe zone near the ship while the operatives continued their mission. Even though part of the team was focused on extraction, the rest had another urgent objective: gather intelligence, uncover hidden secrets, and ensure that the faction could not harm anyone else in the future. Every step into the facility revealed new challenges, but also new opportunities to protect the innocent. The alien facility was a labyrinth of dark corridors, sharp metal surfaces, and strange, pulsating lights that hinted at unknown technology. The operatives moved carefully, scanning every corner and listening to every sound. They had learned quickly that the faction's designs were unpredictable. Rooms that appeared empty could contain hidden sensors, and simple hallways could be traps. Every step required focus, every decision demanded precision. They first came upon a storage area. Crates stacked high contained equipment, some of it clearly designed to control or restrain living beings. The team documented everything, photographing and scanning the materials. These records would be critical later, not just to understand the faction's methods, but also to ensure that the evidence of wrongdoing could be used to prevent future attacks. While some operatives focused on documentation, others continued advancing, their senses alert for any sign of movement. The deeper they went, the clearer it became that the faction had been preparing for more than simple experiments. Some areas showed evidence of organized operations, suggesting that more humans or other species had been captured over time. Small rooms with barely enough space to sit, corridors lined with restraints, and signs of forced confinement all pointed to a systematic plan. The operatives felt the weight of urgency grow heavier. The longer they stayed undetected, the more they could learn. But every minute also increased the risk. Suddenly, one of the operatives noticed movement through a translucent wall. Inside, several beings were restrained and monitored, appearing weak and confused. These were other captives, possibly left from previous abductions. The team quickly formulated a plan. They couldn't leave anyone behind. Their mission was about more than one rescue. It was about ensuring that no one suffered at the hands of the faction. They moved in carefully, disabling the locks with specialized tools. Every action had to be quiet, precise, and efficient. Some of the captives were too frightened to move at first, unsure whether to trust strangers in the shadows. The operatives spoke gently, using calm, reassuring tones to ease their fear. "We are here to help," one whispered, making sure the words carried safety rather than alarm. Slowly, the captives followed, guided by hands ready to support them if needed. While moving through the facility, the team encountered automated defenses. Small drones hovered silently, scanning the corridors, while mechanical turrets patrolled the larger spaces. These machines were unfamiliar and advanced, but the operatives had anticipated such threats. They used stealth tactics, moving just out of sensor range, and employed temporary disruptors to disable or mislead the devices. Every interaction with the enemy technology required both intelligence and creativity. Failure could mean triggering alarms and endangering lives. At one point, they reached a chamber that appeared to be a central laboratory. The alien faction had been conducting experiments here, some aimed at understanding human physiology, others more sinister. Equipment hummed softly, lights flickered over complex consoles, and various containment units lined the walls. The operatives carefully collected data, copying files onto secure devices and taking detailed notes. This information would be critical for understanding the faction's plans, and also for ensuring that they could not repeat such cruelty. Despite the tension, the team maintained focus on the human element. They reminded themselves constantly that the captives, some frightened, some injured, some barely conscious, depended on them. Every decision balanced operational efficiency with care for the individuals they were protecting. No one was expendable. No life was insignificant. This focus on humanity gave the operatives strength, even in the most dangerous moments. While exploring the lab, the team discovered personal belongings of previous captives. Small tokens, notes, and sketches revealed the lives that had been interrupted. These items told stories of fear, hope, and resilience. For the operatives, this was a sobering reminder of what they were fighting for. Each object symbolized a life that mattered, a life that could be saved, and a duty that could not be ignored. As they moved further, the team realized they were not alone. A group of faction guards had arrived in a nearby corridor. The operatives immediately took cover, analyzing the situation. They knew that direct confrontation could be dangerous, but sometimes it was unavoidable. Using quick hand signals, they coordinated a plan. One operative would distract the guards with a temporary noise while the others slipped past and continued toward the captives. The plan required perfect timing, and any misstep could alert the entire facility. The distraction worked. A small device emitted a soft, unusual sound that drew the guards' attention. While the faction personnel investigated, the operatives moved silently, keeping low and blending into shadows. They reached a corridor that led to another containment area where more captives were held. The sight of human beings, weak and terrified, strengthened their resolve. They could not fail. They would not leave anyone behind. Throughout the operation, communication remained key. The team used subtle gestures and coded signals to coordinate movement, ensuring that everyone was aware of shifts in patrols, obstacles, and environmental changes. Their training allowed them to act as one, anticipating each other's needs and responding instinctively to unexpected challenges. Trust in one another became their greatest advantage. Hours passed as the operatives moved through the facility. They faced multiple obstacles: locked doors, security sensors, narrow passages, and the occasional patrol. Each was handled with precision. Some doors required technical skills to unlock, while others required the team to improvise and find alternate paths. The operatives adapted quickly, making calculated decisions that balanced speed and caution. Finally, they reached the deepest part of the facility, a heavily guarded section that appeared to be the faction's primary holding area for captives. The room was large, filled with individuals who had been restrained and left in poor conditions. The operatives moved quickly but carefully, working to free each person. Some were too weak to stand, others too frightened to move, but every captive received attention. The operatives reassured them, encouraged them, and helped them toward safety. Even in this tense moment, the team continued to gather evidence. They recorded the layout of the room, the types of restraints, and the condition of the captives. Digital devices were secured, and important files were copied for later analysis. Every piece of evidence would serve as proof of wrongdoing, and also as a tool to prevent the faction from continuing such acts in the future. The final challenge came as the operatives prepared to leave the facility. Sensors began to activate, alarms started to hum faintly, and distant footsteps indicated that faction personnel were closing in. The team coordinated quickly, guiding the captives through alternate routes and keeping everyone low and quiet. A combination of careful planning, training, and calm execution allowed them to navigate the final section safely. At last, they reached the point where the ship awaited. The captives were tired, frightened, and relieved. The operatives ensured that everyone boarded safely, checking multiple times to confirm that no one had been left behind. Once aboard, the ship's systems were activated, and they began their quiet journey back to the temporary safe zone. Even as the danger passed, the team remained vigilant. They knew that leaving the facility did not mean the mission was over. Every piece of evidence, every rescued individual, was a responsibility that required careful handling. They reviewed the data collected, reassured the captives, and prepared for debriefing once they returned to secure territory. Part 4 ends with the operatives moving through the darkness of space, carrying rescued captives, secured evidence, and the weight of their mission. They had navigated unfamiliar territory, faced unpredictable threats, and succeeded in freeing innocent lives. Yet the experience had left its mark on everyone. They had seen fear, cruelty, and desperation, but also resilience, hope, and the importance of courage. For the operatives, the mission reinforced a simple truth: the universe could be harsh and dangerous, but human determination, compassion, and skill could make a difference. They had acted where others could not, protected those who had no one else to turn to, and upheld the principles of justice and humanity. And even as the ship traveled through the cold expanse of space, the operatives knew that their work was far from done. The captives were safe for now, but the galaxy remained unpredictable. The mission had succeeded, but the story of protection, courage, and resilience was only continuing. Part 5 begins as the elite team guides the rescued captives through the rocky terrain toward their transport ship. Even though the danger inside the facility had passed, the operatives knew the mission was far from over. The hostile faction could pursue them at any moment, and any mistake during extraction could undo all their careful planning. Every step they took outside the facility had to be cautious, precise, and coordinated, The captives were exhausted, some barely able to walk, others trembling from fear and trauma. The operatives offered support, carrying some, holding others up, and encouraging everyone with calm, gentle words. "You are safe now," one operative whispered softly. "We are here with you. Nothing will hurt you anymore." The captives clung to these words, even as uncertainty lingered in their eyes. They had endured so much that trust came slowly, but the team's quiet determination helped them believe that safety was finally within reach. The rocky path to the ship was treacherous. Loose stones, sharp edges, and uneven surfaces could easily trip someone. The team moved carefully, taking turns to scout ahead and cover each other's movements. They communicated in silent signals, ensuring that every step was coordinated. One misstep could alert the faction or cause an injury, so patience and vigilance were crucial. Suddenly, they heard distant mechanical noises echoing through the cliffs. The faction had discovered the intrusion and was beginning to pursue. The team's training kicked in immediately. They formed defensive positions, preparing to confront any approaching forces if necessary. Despite the fear and exhaustion, their movements were controlled and precise. Panic had no place in this mission. Each operative relied on their skills, trusting their training and each other to overcome whatever challenge lay ahead. The first encounter came quickly. A patrol unit emerged from behind a rocky outcrop, unaware of the team's presence. Using a combination of stealth and strategy, the operatives managed to neutralize the threat without causing harm to the patrol. They used non-lethal devices, distractions, and careful coordination to ensure the patrol was incapacitated quietly. The captives remained hidden, unaware of the danger as the operatives moved them past. This was not just a battle. It was a calculated operation to protect innocent lives. As they moved further, another obstacle appeared, a narrow bridge over a deep canyon. The faction had set up automated defenses across the bridge, including sensors that could trigger alarms. The team studied the setup carefully, analyzing patterns and finding weak points. One operative crawled ahead to disable the sensors, while the others guided the captives safely across. Every movement was precise, every step deliberate. The bridge crossing tested their patience, focus, and nerves, but the team succeeded without alerting the faction. Once across, the operatives paused briefly to regroup and check the captives. Everyone was accounted for, and no one had been injured. The team allowed a moment of quiet relief, knowing that the worst obstacles were still ahead, but feeling a sense of accomplishment. They continued moving toward the ship, which was concealed in a narrow canyon, protected by shadows and natural terrain. As they approached the ship, the faction became more aggressive. Drones began to hover above, scanning the area, and distant lights revealed patrols closing in. The team prepared for confrontation. They positioned themselves strategically around the captives, ready to respond to any attack. Communication was silent, relying on hand signals and eye contact. The operatives had faced situations like this before, but the stakes had never been higher. They were not just protecting themselves, they were protecting lives. The first drone approached, scanning the area with a bright beam. One operative deployed a small device that emitted a signal to confuse the drone's sensors. The drone hesitated, then moved away from the group, allowing them to continue toward the ship. The team repeated this process with other drones, using their advanced tools and quick thinking to stay undetected. Every distraction, every maneuver, required precision and timing. The final approach to the ship was tense. Patrols were nearby, moving unpredictably, and automated turrets scanned the canyon. The operatives had to coordinate perfectly to reach the ship without triggering an alarm. They split into small teams, one guiding the captives, another handling threats, and another monitoring the environment for hidden dangers. Every member knew their role and executed it flawlessly. As they reached the ship, the operatives quickly helped the captives inside, ensuring everyone was safe and seated. They checked life support systems, communication devices, and navigation controls. The ship's engines hummed quietly, ready for immediate departure. Outside, the faction was beginning to realize that the intruders were escaping. Patrols accelerated, and drones attempted to track the ship's location. But the vessel's stealth systems activated just in time, masking their movement and allowing them to leave the area undetected. Once in space, the team allowed themselves a moment to breathe. The immediate danger had passed, and all captives were alive and accounted for. But the mission was not over. Evidence of the faction's cruelty had been gathered, captives had been rescued, and the next challenge would be returning safely to secure territory. The operatives began reviewing the data collected, ensuring that nothing was missing or compromised. Every piece of evidence could be used to prevent future attacks and hold the faction accountable. The captives began to recover slightly during the journey. Some spoke quietly, asking questions about the operatives and the rescue. The team answered gently, offering reassurance and comfort. "You are safe now," one operative said. "We will get you home, and no one will hurt you again." The words were simple, but their meaning was powerful. For the first time in weeks or even months, the captives could feel hope again. Meanwhile, the operatives monitored communication channels carefully. They knew the faction might attempt to follow or track them, so every signal was encrypted and secure. They planned the safest route back, avoiding areas where enemy forces could intercept them. Navigation through space required constant attention. One mistake could reveal their location, putting everyone at risk. The team remained vigilant, balancing speed and caution. During the journey, one of the operatives reviewed the evidence collected from the facility. Digital files, photos, and recordings were analyzed carefully. The evidence revealed the faction's systematic cruelty, their experiments, and the lives they had endangered. It was clear that the faction posed a continuing threat if left unchecked. The operatives realized that this mission was only the beginning. Earth would need to take further steps to ensure that such atrocities could not happen again. The journey also allowed time for reflection. The operatives considered the courage of the captives, their resilience despite suffering, and the importance of the mission. They understood that every action they took mattered not for recognition or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. Each rescued life was a reminder of humanity's responsibility to protect those who could not protect themselves. As the ship approached secure territory, the team prepared for landing. They checked systems, confirmed the condition of the captives, and coordinated with support personnel on the ground. The landing had to be precise to avoid drawing attention or creating risk. The operatives remained focused, ensuring that the final phase of the mission would be executed without error. Upon landing, the captives were assisted out of the ship. Medical personnel were ready to evaluate them, provide care, and begin the process of recovery. The operatives stayed with them, offering reassurance and guidance. The relief on the captives' faces was evident. They were safe, finally out of danger, and beginning to feel human again. The operatives allowed themselves a quiet moment of satisfaction, knowing that their mission had saved lives. However, there was no celebration. The faction still existed, and the universe remained unpredictable. The mission had succeeded in rescuing the captives and gathering evidence, but it had also revealed the ongoing threat posed by the hostile group. The operatives knew that further action would be required to prevent future harm. Earth's leadership would need to analyze the evidence, plan next steps, and ensure that such cruelty could not continue. Part 5 ends with the operatives standing quietly as the captives are cared for. Evidence is secured, and the immediate danger has passed. They had faced uncertainty, fear, and danger, but their training, skill, and determination had ensured success. The mission had reinforced the importance of teamwork, courage, and human responsibility. The operatives had acted where others could not. protected lives that could not protect themselves, and upheld the principles of justice and compassion. The experience had left its mark on everyone involved, strengthening their resolve and reminding them why they had chosen this path. And even as the universe stretched out in quiet darkness around them, the team knew that their mission was part of a larger story. Protecting the innocent, confronting danger, and standing for justice was a duty they would continue to uphold, no matter the cost. Begins with the operatives and the rescued captives back on Earth, in a secure, hidden facility far from public eyes. The immediate danger of the hostile faction had passed, but the work was far from complete. The captives were exhausted, frightened, and still processing everything they had endured. The team knew that survival was only the first step. Healing, understanding, and ensuring that justice was served would take time and care. Medical personnel and psychologists were ready to assist. The captives were examined carefully, checked for injuries, and provided with treatments for both physical and emotional trauma. Some were weak from confinement. Others had lasting signs of fear or stress. The operatives stayed close, offering quiet support, holding hands, or simply remaining present to show that safety was real and constant. Small gestures mattered. They were reminders that someone cared, that someone had acted to protect them, and that the world was not entirely cruel. The youngest of the captives, a human girl, was still shaken from her previous capture. Her eyes reflected the fear she had carried for so long, but there was also a glimmer of relief, trust, and curiosity. She asked questions softly, almost cautiously, about the operatives and the mission. The team answered gently, explaining that she was safe, that they had brought her home, and that nothing would harm her again. Her voice, shaky at first, began to grow stronger as she realized she was surrounded by people who were there to protect her. While the captives recovered, the operatives worked on analyzing the evidence collected from the alien facility. Files, digital records, photographs, and physical objects were reviewed meticulously. Every piece of information revealed more about the faction's cruelty, their methods, and their objectives. The evidence clearly showed that the faction posed a serious and ongoing threat, not only to humans, but potentially to other species in the galaxy. The operatives understood that sharing this information with Earth's leadership would be crucial in preventing future attacks. The team conducted debriefings, reviewing every step of the mission, every decision made, and every challenge encountered. They discussed what had worked, what could have been improved, and how the experience would inform future operations. The process was thorough, honest, and professional. Mistakes were acknowledged, but successes were recognized not as achievements for personal pride, but as proof that teamwork, preparation, and dedication could save lives. As the days passed, the captives began to heal. They regained strength, confidence, and a sense of security. The operatives provided support, guidance, and reassurance, helping them understand that the universe was vast, but that courage, care, and resilience could protect them. Small victories like a captive sleeping through the night without fear, or speaking freely without trembling, became milestones. Each one reminded the operatives why they had risked so much to complete the mission. Earth's leadership reviewed the evidence and mission reports carefully. They realized that the faction could not be ignored and that preventive action was necessary. However, they also understood the importance of discretion. Public knowledge of such threats could cause panic, and it could encourage the faction to retaliate. Decisions were made behind closed doors, with careful consideration of strategy, ethics, and the need to protect innocent lives. The mission had broader implications. Earth's leaders began planning ways to strengthen defenses, enhance intelligence operations, and ensure that elite operatives could respond quickly to future threats. The success of this mission became a case study in preparation, coordination, and human resilience. While the general public would never know the details, the lessons learned would influence policies, technology, and training programs for years to come. For the operatives, the mission reinforced their purpose. They had faced fear, danger, and the unknown, yet they had acted with precision, care, and courage. They had protected lives that could not protect themselves, and they had gathered evidence that could prevent further suffering. The experience strengthened their belief in the importance of their work. They were part of a silent shield, guarding humanity against threats that most people could not even imagine. The young human girl, at the center of the initial crisis, gradually began to regain confidence. She started exploring safe areas of the facility, interacting with staff, and asking questions about the operatives and their training. She wanted to understand how they had rescued her, how they had stayed calm, and how they had managed to face danger so effectively. The operatives answered her questions carefully, emphasizing courage, planning, and compassion as the core of their actions. They encouraged her curiosity and reassured her that her resilience was equally important. While recovery continued, the operatives also planned for long-term protection. They shared knowledge of the faction's behavior, technology, and tactics with specialized teams. Strategies were developed to prevent future abductions, enhance early warning systems, and strengthen rapid response protocols. The mission's success became a blueprint for how to balance stealth, intelligence, and human care in operations where lives were at stake. The operatives reflected on the human side of their mission. They remembered the fear in the captives' eyes, the relief when they first realized safety, and the quiet moments of trust that were built through careful attention and compassion. It became clear that saving lives was more than just completing tactical objectives. It was about empathy, patience, and understanding. Humanity was fragile, but it was also capable of extraordinary courage when protected and supported. Even as the mission wound down, the operatives knew the universe would remain unpredictable. Threats could arise again, and the hostile faction would not easily forget this defeat. However, they also knew that preparation, training, and a commitment to protect the innocent could make a difference. Their actions had proven that humanity was capable of responding to cruelty with courage, precision, and care. The rescued captives were eventually moved to longer-term safe locations, where they could continue their recovery and receive support for emotional and physical healing. The young girl, in particular, began participating in rehabilitation programs designed to help her regain confidence, independence, and a sense of security. She formed bonds with staff and even with some of the operatives, who continued to mentor and guide her in subtle ways. Her progress was slow but steady, a testament to resilience in the face of trauma. The operatives also debriefed on the emotional impact of the mission. They acknowledged that seeing cruelty firsthand and bearing responsibility for the safety of others carried a psychological weight. They supported each other, shared experiences, and reinforced the importance of teamwork, not only for mission success, but for emotional resilience. They understood that being part of such a mission required balanced strength in action, but also reflection, care, and human understanding. As time passed, Earth implemented measures inspired by the mission. Training programs were refined, intelligence networks strengthened, and covert protective operations enhanced. The success of the mission demonstrated that careful planning, human skill, and compassion could prevent tragedies, protect lives, and uphold justice. Though the public remained unaware of the specifics, the world became safer because of these actions. Part 6 concludes with the operatives reflecting on their journey. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, yet they had acted with courage, precision, and humanity. They had rescued captives, gathered critical evidence, and demonstrated that even in the face of cruelty, resilience, empathy, and preparation could prevail. The young girl, once terrified and harmed, was safe and beginning to heal. The universe remained vast and unpredictable, but Earth's secret protectors had shown that humanity could rise to meet challenges with skill, compassion, and courage. The mission had ended, but its impact would be felt for years. Lives had been saved, innocence protected, and lessons learned. The operatives returned to their duties quietly, knowing that their work mattered, even if no one would ever know the full story. Their courage had created hope. Their skill had preserved life. And their humanity had reminded everyone that even in the darkest situations, care, courage, and resilience could prevail. The universe was still uncertain, still filled with challenges, but for now, there was safety. There was healing, and there was hope. Humanity had acted when others could not, protecting those who were defenseless and demonstrating that compassion, skill, and courage could make a difference in even the most dangerous situations. And in the quiet aftermath, as the operatives looked at the stars, they understood a simple truth: protection, courage, and empathy were the strongest weapons of all. The story of the rescue would never be told publicly, but its legacy would live on in the lives they had saved and the lives they would continue to protect.